Okay, so let me ask you this real quick. What do you think is the piece of gear that has grown on you the most in the past 5 to 10 years? For me, I'd probably say it's the Helix, and that's really interesting, you see, because I hated amp modelers for years after having a bad experience with one when I was living with my parents. But after essentially borrowing one to play at church for over a year, I was like immediately thrust into this world that I never thought I would have this great appreciation for. And I wasn't just brought into this world, no, I dove headfirst into the deep end, kind of like Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper. I mean, I could probably count on one finger the amount of times in the past couple of years where I had a live gig and I opted not to bring either the Helix or the Quad Cortex. I mean, it's just easier, am I right? But what if that's not true like 100% of the time? Like, you remember that one time I was just alluding to? You see, about a month ago, for the first time in a horrendously long time, I decided to actually opt out of bringing an all-in-one modeler to a live gig because I thought it would be a cool idea to sort of stretch my pedal board building muscles. So I made this crazy mini board, and I thought this thing was loaded, if I do say so myself. I'm talking the perfect amount of compression, the exact style of overdrive I like, the luscious reverbs I'd heard in a minute, and I was so excited. I mean, one of my friends, he even looks at me and he notices that I don't have my usual thing. He's like, "Oh, usually you have like the Helix or something." I'm like, "No, no, 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 no. Today, bro, I built this specifically for today, for right now. You're about to hear the magic." So I plug this thing in, I set it up, we start playing, and about 2 songs deep into our set list, I notice, and I mean I noticed immediately, that this board right here is actually a complete and utter disaster. The tones were completely off from what I thought I was hearing before. My power supply shut down a couple songs in, so I was left with multiple songs of me just playing air guitar. Basically everything that could go wrong did. It eventually got so bad that I had to ask the other guitar player if I could borrow his Podgo that thankfully he had on him and wasn't using, just so that I could finish the set with something or anything. I mean, I was simultaneously angry, frustrated, and disappointed that I'd put so much time into this board that had failed so miserably. I thought to myself, this can never happen again, and I guess that's where, well, this sort of comes into the picture.
Now, I've built boards before, and most of them have been pretty successful for the specific gig or purpose they were intended for, but with this being a board that was meant to compete with some of the current patches on my Helix, I knew that I would have to recreate basically the ultimate version to see what I had missed out on.
Basically, I took everything that didn't work about the last board and revamped it based on both what I liked and what went completely wrong. And I basically started with what I liked, first of which was the flexibility of tones, second of which was the pedals themselves, and then I went to what I wanted to fix, which was how well they work together, simplicity of use, even though there's a lot of pedals, flexibility of use, both here and in a live setting. Now, before getting into any of the whole pedal situation, this requires a lot of power, so I need a good power supply. And I have a friend who's been telling me that he has one that he uses on all his boards, so I decided to hit him up really quickly.
Hey, bro, do you think I could borrow or maybe steal a power supply real quick?
Borrow or take forever and never bring it back?
Now, the first pedal in this whole situation happens to be my fuzz, which is the Pigtronic Star Eater. Now, I have about 3 different always-on pedals that I have on this board currently, but this pedal specifically is what I refer to as my always-off. Now, that's not anything against this pedal, it's just that fuzz isn't necessarily something I use on an everyday basis. What happened was I found this pedal and I found a setting that I like. Which is really cool, but it's basically just for having something on there where I know that once a year or once every couple of months where I actually need something a little bit heavier than a distortion, I like knowing it's there. But like I said, for most of the time, it pretty much stays off. But my next pedal is actually one of the 3 always-on pedals, which is the compressor. Now, I've been using the UA Max for about a year, which I really like, and it has all of these different compressor settings. But what I notice is I really only end up using one at a time, and that's where the Teletronics from UA comes in, which is an LA2A emulation. Now, the specific compressor settings when I'm doing recording for friends or something like that, those really don't change until I get to the live setting, where I really like having something to more control myself in the mix outside of just the EQ that I can change on the fly. Now, also, I like having the gain in there, knowing how much I can feed my amp, because I really don't like changing the gain on this amp right here, but more on that in a second. But real talk, I pretty much know that I'm just a simple man who likes to use a bit of compression without really getting into limiting, but knowing that that gain knob is there. And that that, ladies and gentlemen, is where we enter into the drive section. Now, the drive section has always been an interesting thing for me. For years and years, I always just had a tube screamer on my board. But I wanted to get a little bit more into the realm of why I wanted a tube screamer. And that's where I started questioning my friends. And I was like, why do you have the pedals on there that you have in terms of the drive section? And because I wanted to feed into the variety of tones thing, that's where I entered into the Tone X1 situation. Because much like with amps, I had all of the stomp boxes here that I could find that anyone could model. But then it came to the what specific stomp box do I even want to model? And I've learned a lot in recent days about the difference between something like, say, a transparent overdrive and a tube screamer. But my friend actually suggested a different scenario. He was like, Mike, have you ever considered the Klon as your one and only type of overdrive pedal? And I was like, that sounds interesting. I've used Klon type pedals before. So scrolling through the Tone X, I actually found a Wampler Tumnus style thing. And it was just really smooth and it worked. Like, I'm dealing with an amp that's already a little bit broken up, which is the way that I like it. So I wanted it to really feed this thing more than just like a regular transparent overdrive, but still not go into the realm of overly distorted, knowing again that I like the amp on the edge of breakup. But also part of the reason why I chose it, they made it a lot smaller and it has a tuner now. The tuner is usually the first thing that I have on this board and in any rig. So knowing that there was a tuner there and I could save a little bit more space on this board, knowing that I really like the Wampler Tumnus sound, but if I wanted something different, if I wanted to switch back to like the SD1 or the Tube Screamer thing, I'd have it there. Tone X1 came in really clutch for that. But after the Tone X1, I actually go to my other technically always on pedal, which is the volume pedal. Now, much like the fuzz pedal before, ambient swells are not something that I really do a lot with the volume pedal, which is wild seeing that I'm like a modern CCM church player, but I'd like to have it knowing it's there, especially with like a shimmer. Now we get into our modulation section, which is where we have the first of our flex pedals. And this is where things got really interesting. You see, this is the HX1 from line 6, which is basically you get one effect at all time, basically everything from the Helix. So I was struggling to know whether I should use that as like a reverb or delay. And then I thought to myself, okay, I don't use modulation on a regular basis. It's usually once every 4 to 5 gigs as like a cool effect or a standout thing. But what if I had it there and then I have all of the different modulations? So if I wanted chorus, but also I've seen a lot of value in having it as an EQ or a boost going after the drive section and being able to push the amp a little bit more without getting into as heavy as like the Wampler Tumnus that I was modeling. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we've made it to one of the sections we've all been waiting for, which is the amp modeler. Now, one of the things that I realized a couple of months ago, once I really got into the world of some of the UA Rubies and the Dreams, was I put them in stereo for the first time. And I was like, I see why people really like this stereo sound, but I wanted to dive even deeper into that world. So I was going to do that specific setup, but I remembered something. The pedal that I bought on Facebook Marketplace almost 2 years ago was the WALRUS ACS1. Now, I figured out that I really liked that pedal because it was my real introduction into this world of amp modelers before I even got into the Helixes or anything. But what I figured out was I didn't really fully understand just how serious the stereo capabilities were when it came to this pedal. And once I did, I realized that beforehand, past Michael, he thought he understood the pedal. He didn't understand it at all. This thing is a beast. But specifically what I like about it is having it on the edge of breakup. Specifically with a guitar like this where I have both the humbucker and the single coil options, I like knowing that I have the single coil thing, that if I don't press too hard, it'll be clean. But I like knowing that if I go to the bridge pickup and it's the humbucker, that if I push a little bit, I won't have to turn on the overdrive yet before I start getting a little bit or a good bit of that breakup. Like, I can feel that, and those are some really cool overdriven rhythm tones that I feel like are more than usable, even if I didn't want to get into the Wampler tumnus thing. But then, ladies and gentlemen, we start to go to some of my favorite sections, which is the time-based effects. Being a church guitar player, I've seen the Strymon timeline on a million different boards from a million years, but this is the first one that I've used. And it's nice being able to toggle through like the dotted 8 thing that's just pretty much an always on for my delay when I use it, even if the timeline isn't an always on. And pairing that with the Strymon Big Sky, which we can get as ambient as we want to. But normally with the Big Sky, I usually just toggle between something like a spring for like a lot of the blues stuff, and then go back to the hall when I need like that ambient churchy stuff. So at the end of the day, I think the board was a success, and not just because I think it sounded better than some of the other boards that I've put together, even though I think this sounded amazing, but more because I think I put more time into a lot of the little intangibles about this board more than sound when I was thinking about the order of the pedals, or when I was thinking about the power supply, or just how they interact well with each other on like an individual and on a large scale basis. I think that putting together boards, whether on a modeler like the Helix or in person like this, I feel like tonally that can take you to a whole nother level, because you just learn how different things interact with each other, and you learn what specific sounds you like, and just as important, the things that you don't like. And I even think it's cool how you learn, like I did with the ACS1, the different things that individual pedals can do. I've always been a mono guy because it's been super easy, but once I started playing with stereo reverbs and delays, I was like, okay, there's so much potential with what we can do here with the ACS1 and with the different time-based effects I've been using. And now I'm like, oh, we're playing a whole new ball game. But at the end of the day, I don't think it matters what I think. What matters is what you think. So please let me know, how'd you think I did with this board? What specific changes have you been making to your pedal board recently, or what's been the game-changing pedal on the board? Let me know in the comments. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. I've been meaning to make a board again for a while, and just having all of these elements and wanting to try them out and see what they could do together, that was a really cool experiment. If you want to know anything about any of these pedals, I got them from the homies at Sweetwater. The links are in the description. Make sure to check them out. It's one of the best ways to support the channel, if that's something you want to do. Or if you're just curious about any of the other gear that I use in this video, make sure to check out those links. Also, thank you so much to my patrons. There's some exclusive stuff on there if you want to join the community. Like and subscribe if you had a good time, and most importantly, like most important of all, have a fantastic night.